My name is Greg Rock. I'm the Executive Director of Clean and Prosperous America. Clean and Prosperous America is both a 501c4 and a political action committee. This allows us to give to both political and non-political organizations. For people who are looking to make tax-deductible donations, we do have a lot of 501c3 eligible grantees, and the pathway for that is to donate money to the Washington Business Alliance Fund, which is a 501c3, our fiscal partner, and they then provide restricted grants to our 501c4. We're a new upstart org. We've been around for 1 year. We did research. We got that research to candidates to use them as a microphone and try to reach youth and talk to them about this audience that we think is movable and movable not only to turn out, but to turn out for Democrats. And we did a grassroots program where we were funding grassroots organizations in 12 states. We solicited over 100 proposals, ended up giving money to 43 different groups. It was $1.3 million in combined resources and toolkit resources and direct funds. And we really focused in 4 states over the final 4 months of the campaign: North Carolina, Arizona, Georgia, and Iowa. They all were important states, so we were kind of excited about where we ended up focusing. But what I'd really like to now just turn it over directly to Bill McLean, who's one of our founding members, board member, as well as our full-time research and marketing director, to talk a little bit about why we think the youth movement's going to be really important in this Georgia race.
All right. So like all of you, really excited to see a climate champion moving into the White House. And like all of you, also have been tracking to see what the role of young voters might be in realizing that outcome. Would they turn out to vote or not? And in fact, they did. They turned out in record numbers. It's tracking to be about a 53–55% turnout amongst voters ages 18 to 29. And as importantly as anything, I think, is that they made up a large share of the overall electorate. The share in Georgia was 21%, and that was #1 among all 50 states. So that's pretty encouraging as we pivot to Georgia. And as we look at Georgia in particular, it was the votes of young voters, the 18 to 29, 596,000 votes that provided President-elect Biden with his winning margin. So as we look at that, we're thinking that Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff are going to need every one of those votes on January 5th. And it's in our work that we aim to get all those votes and even more. In fact, we've already identified that there are 23,000 Georgians who were born too late. But they're too young to vote last week, but they will be 18 before January 5th. So we're looking to turn them out as well. Now, it's important to recognize that young voters in Georgia have racially diverse voting preferences, and that Biden's margin was powered by young voters of color. Now, that does not mean we won't work to turn out left-leaning Generation Z voters across the board in both urban areas and in non-urban areas, but we will focus our efforts on young people of color in both urban areas and in non-urban areas. And we're doing that in a number of ways. Amelia is going to talk about our grassroots efforts. That's at the core of our work. We are also, though, doing some PR work. We've engaged with a PR agency, a communications agency called Phoenix Strategies, and we've tasked them to amp up young voter participation through communications with colleges, with influencers, micro-influencers, social media. And in fact, the agency that we are working with has some good, strong connections with Stacey Abrams and her Fair Fight organization. They were already in conversation yesterday regarding some collaborative efforts. So we're pretty excited about what we've got going on, what we've already started to do. And on that front, in terms of what we've already started to do, Amelia and her team have already collected proposals from grassroots organizations. They put a bunch of really good work into reviewing those proposals and selecting the best ones to bring forward. So I'm going to turn my screen over to Amelia to tell you more about what she's got teed up.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Hi, everyone. So as Bill said, I'm Amelia. I'm the Grant Program Director here at Clean and Prosperous America. Let me share my screen here. I'm going to get a little bit more into the details. So I don't think this is going to be news to anyone on this call, the importance of these two Senate races to determine control of the Senate. But as we all know, it's absolutely essential to give our next presidents some ability to actually make some things happen and do some good climate work. So it's an exciting opportunity and it's a big task ahead of us. And we really need to be starting on this pretty much right now. And honestly, pretty much yesterday. Let me see if I can get next slide to advance. Here we go. So this is a timeline of what the next couple of months look like for us. Voters can be requesting absentee ballots right now. Colleges are going to close very soon, and that will send students back home for winter break. They will be home, whether that's elsewhere in Georgia or in a different states, through the election. So the next couple days really are essential to get students registered for absentee ballots and make those connections that can be made in person while we still can. And then election day is right around the corner. So as Bill said, our team, we've been working in Georgia for months now. It's been one of our priority states well before the last election. And so we're on the ground and we've been contacting organizations, both folks that we've already worked with and people that are new to us, to ask them for proposals to work on getting the youth vote out in this election. And this is what we have so far. It's really exciting. The quality of the proposals we're seeing are great. And we're getting a range of larger organizations that have a lot of capacity and can do a lot of work. And also smaller organizations, volunteer run, community-based orgs that most funders probably would never hear about. So it's an exciting opportunity. More proposals are still coming in today and probably through this week. I'll give you a flavor for what we're getting. These are a few examples of really high quality proposals that we've seen. New Georgia Project, this is, as you may already know, an organization that is a coordinator and convener for a bunch of other groups and efforts, congregations, faith leaders, other nonprofits, working together with all of them to target specific campaigns to Black, Latinx, and AAPI voters, which we're excited about. Georgia Shift is a Black-led organization working directly with campus faculty and administration to help with that information to students I was just talking about, to get them early voting, get them voting by mail, and do it as quickly as possible. And then Rise is an organization that uses relational organizing tactics specifically to reach students and is hosting what they're calling Black the Vote Academies, which are training Black student organizers to then reach out to their peers. Two things I want to point out about these proposals and a bunch of the others we've received is one, the focus on BIPOC youth. As Bill said, this is an important and powerful part of the electorate, but we also know that historically they've been looked over by funders and campaigns, and they also face more voter suppression than just about everyone else. So we're going to really focus there. And then secondly, just that emphasis on reaching students and reaching them as quickly as possible. They're a powerful voting bloc. They're organizing, they're energized, but we need to get to them now. So CaPA's role in all of this is really a compilation of several aspects here. One is that we're going to use the lessons that we learned from our past 2 rounds of grant making before the last election. And one of the things that really stood out in this last round was the effectiveness of relational organizing. That's any organizing where instead of having your volunteers cold call a list of people, you have them reach out to their personal networks, talk to their friends, talk to their family, get them to vote. It's proven to be much more effective, especially with younger folks. And since we know that in the next 2 months, everyone's going to be in Georgia and young folks will be hearing a lot of election messaging, this is a really great way to cut through all that by having the message come from somebody they know and trust. We'll also be providing tools, data, technical assistance, opportunities for collaboration between our grantees. In our last round of grant making, right before the general election, our grantees used text banking tools that we provided to them at no cost And they sent over 1 million texts, for example, with those tools. We provided some data, messaging guidance that they found really helpful. So we want to do that again. And then, of course, our primary role and most important is to provide funding right now so that they can hit the ground running, put their plans into action, and start reaching young voters while the registration deadline is still open.
So I'm going to turn it over to Simon, who's been a great political consultant for us that's helped get us kind of up to speed on a lot of this stuff quickly over the past year, to talk about kind of where we're at and where he sees this going.
Listen, thanks everybody. And it's really been a great pleasure to be part of this project the last few months. I think it's been a lot of fun, and I think we've gotten really important things done. So it's been terrific. Let me just, I think because the presentations we heard from on the ground in Georgia really tell you, I think, everything you need to know, frankly. This is really important work, and it's working. And so more money in this runoff will be really critical in this election. There's a lot of different ways you can give your political capital, and I think this is really smart investing. But let me make two basic observations. One is about the race itself. I don't know that we're underdogs in this race. And I know that in general, the view is in Georgia that in runoffs, because we have more irregular voters in our coalition, that we tend to have more drop off in runoffs. And so therefore Republicans often win. I don't know that that's really going to happen this time. This has been a very unpredictable election cycle. And I think the things that we do know right now about this race is that the two Republican candidates are very weak candidates. They're weak in different ways. Loeffler, the incumbent who was appointed, only got in the 20s in her vote. It's an incredibly low share. She's going to have a very hard time bringing the Republican Party with her. And she's been exposed repeatedly for rampant corruption since she's been in office. And I think that she's one of the weakest candidates that I've seen in recent memory, and I think she's very beatable. I think Perdue is sort of a tired old guy that is going to be that we're going to be able to run against, and so I'm very optimistic about the quality of our candidates versus the quality of their candidates. Second is no Trump on the ballot. Right? We don't know what that means about what the Republican Party is going to feel like if it's clear that Trump has lost. But in 2017, 2018, and 2019, the three elections where there was no Trump, Democrats had their best possible outcome elections. Republicans had a very hard time winning. They had a very hard time turning out their voters. There's some significant percentage of the people that voted for Donald Trump that may not be Republican voters. They may be Trump voters, and we don't know how many there are, but certainly that was the case in the last three elections where he wasn't on the ballot. The other thing I think that's going to be problematic for them is that one of the based on the exit polls, the economy was clearly a strength for Trump in the end game and was critical to him, the perception that he was strong on the economy. I don't think that Loeffler and Perdue are going to have that kind of same affinity on an issue that really matters. People want to get back to work. They want things to get back to normal. I think we as Democrats may have underestimated a little bit some of the desire for people to go back to work, and the threat of the shutdown Democrats, I think, was actually very effective for the Republicans at the end. I don't think that Loeffler and Perdue are going to have those same advantages. On the positive side, you heard it tonight, the sense of pride and success that the organizations that have been working so hard to change things in Georgia, I think that's going to continue. I think the sense is going to be, listen, we've come so far, but we've got this one more job to do. We now have empowered organizations that have spent money, been successful. I think I'd rather be us than them in that regard, right? I also think that we're going to have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris campaigning for us. I think Kamala's swings that she does through Georgia are going to be extraordinary events. I would like to go to those, to see her campaigning in African-American communities and other communities in Georgia. It's going to be, I think, a really dynamic and critical part of all this. And I do think on the issues, we're going to be able to make a very powerful case that our positive agenda about the economy, COVID, climate change, racial justice, all the things is something to vote for. It's not just you're voting against Trump, that we have a real agenda to vote for. So I feel as a strategist that this is doable. I don't think this is, a long shot. And I think we have to do it. I mean, we have to finish the job. Finally, on young people, really quickly, 4 things that I think really matter. The group that's most likely to drop off from this last election to the runoffs are young people, which is why we have to invest so heavily, is to prevent the drop off. We had such a high turnout that there is, if there's a significant drop off to the runoffs, it's going to make it very, very difficult for us to win. So we've got to maintain the extraordinary success that we had. Second is, I do think we can create new voters. I think that even if the turnout was at 52, 54, 55% with 18 to 29-year-olds, I think we can grow it. We didn't do as much voter reg in the country in general as we would have under normal circumstances, even though Georgia's done a phenomenal job. Like the 18-year-old stat you had, I think we can keep growing. And I think there's work that there's still people that these amazing groups can still get to. Third is that we've got to do better with white young voters in Georgia. And there's got to be some work done to understand why we didn't do better. And whether or not, if Trump's not on the ballot, there's a real opportunity for us there, because that's something that we can change. And then finally, I just want to reflect on something that you heard, is this issue of the early voting and being able to vote early and not wait till election day, I think was a transformative thing for young voters all across the country. It used to be that when we would organize young voters, we would say, hey, please join me in voting next Tuesday. And instead, what we were saying was, I've already voted, you should too. And this ability to say, I've voted already, or I've done my mail ballot, or I voted in November or October, and I'm going to vote again, as opposed to it being speculative, is incredibly powerful in all this peer-to-peer work that you heard about tonight. And that's why moving, as Greg laid out in the beginning, moving swiftly, aggressively to get into voter reg now, to get people voting now before they go away in the Thanksgiving break, or when they go away in the Thanksgiving break, vote early, to text their friends. We have an incredible amount of raw material here to work with that I think we've never had before, right? That 21% is now all people we can use to mobilize the other part of the 21% and additional new voters. So I'm really optimistic. And one of the reasons I'm here tonight is that, this is one of the most important projects for the Democrats in the last 20 years. The difference between, or 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is, the difference between Mitch McConnell being in charge, right, and us being in charge could be the difference between us passing all this legislation, climate change, go on. I've been in Washington for 28 years. This really matters. We have to get this done. We've got to bring in as many people as we can to give these amazing organizations the tools they need. I hope you'll be part of this tonight.